God's doing an amazing thing, but y'all don't know that this isn't the whole story. This is just part of the story. This is just part of the story. And at this pivotal moment that we're in as a church, I thought it was important that we might go on a journey together and maybe find out the rest of the story. So let's go on a little journey together. We're experiencing an amazing season right here at Life Church. We're seeing people's lives change. We're growing. We're healthy. And as you can see, we're in the process of making room for more people to encounter God and experience life every weekend right here at Life Church. It actually seems like we're in a season of suddenlies. But you know, suddenlies don't come out of nowhere. They always come out of somewhere. And if you came maybe within the last 5 to 10 years, even 15 years at Life Church, you really only know part of the story. But I want to take you on a journey for the next few minutes that will give you what Paul Harvey always called the rest of the story. The house that you see right here is not only the house that my family and I moved into when we moved to Fort Myers when I was just 8 years old, but it also is really what was the birthing place for Life Church, because you see it was in that garage right there that became the very first offices for what is now Life Church. Not only do we have that memory from here, but I remember that our very first youth group meeting took place on the back porch. And from there, we birthed the youth ministry that was known as Youthquake, that was shaking Southwest Florida with the good news of Jesus Christ. And that was a long time ago, and we have a lot of memories, but Life Church right now is really the legacy that was established by people that labored and believed God that greater things could be possible in our region. A lot's changed in 30 years here in Fort Myers, both in our region and in our church. And when we started 30 years ago, we didn't have a permanent location, so we had to find locations throughout the city, throughout our region where we could meet. And the very first location that we began to meet every Sunday was actually right here at this, what's now an empty parking lot off of Fowler Avenue. But there was a building behind us that we would come in every Sunday morning. We'd bring everything in that was necessary for church. We had men and women that would show up to set up the nurseries, to set up all the children's rooms, and of course our sound system and our worship team would get here and do a sound check, and then we'd go and encounter God and experience life. And you know, from the very beginning of our church, we were focused on the presence of God. And we have some powerful worship times, some powerful services with lives changed right here off of Fowler Avenue, where we met from the beginning in the fall of '86 until the early spring of 1987. In early 1987, we were a growing congregation, and that building on Fowler wasn't going to fit the bill for us anymore, so we had to find another place that we could begin to meet every Sunday. And we ended up here, downtown Fort Myers at the Hall of 50 States. Now, it doesn't look like much of a building today, and to be honest with you, it didn't look like much of a building then, but it didn't change the fact that we still gathered here, worshiped God, encountered God together, and began to experience life to the extent that we continue to grow, and more families begin to join our church. One family very special to my heart joined us in that season in the spring of 1987, and it happens to be the family that I married into. So Jennifer, why don't you just tell me again and remind me what it was that brought your family to our church?
Well, I had started attending the youth group and loved it. So I basically, because we were looking for a church to attend, I basically informed my parents that this would be the church I would be attending, and they figured they should join me.
Yeah, if I remember right, you told me that the conversation went something like, I don't know where y'all are going to be going to church, but I found where I'm going to church.
Yes.
And of course that was because there was such a fine looking man that was attending there.
No.
No, that wasn't the reason at that time. No, I don't think it was anyway. But we had an incredible youth group that was attracting families to our church. And so families began to come and we began to build community together. So not only do we have powerful services in this building, but on Sunday nights after church, we would gather at the Snack House, which is an iconic restaurant, remember? And not only was the church meeting at various locations, but our youth group, Youthquake, was also had to find places to meet. So after my home, we first met at, believe it or not, a nursing home. And it wasn't there that you started coming, it was the next location at the Knights of Columbus Hall.
Yes, that's where I started attending.
And so what we found out, we learned a lot as a church, that it really wasn't about the building you had, it was about the people that God had called together. And you didn't have to have a special building, you didn't even have to have a permanent location, you just had to have common vision to pursue God, to encounter Him, to experience life together so that you could advance the kingdom. And that's the things we learned in that season of being a mobile church. So we were here from early 1987 to late 1987, where we had to find yet another place that we could set up every Sunday morning and tear down every Sunday night. So let's just continue our journey together and go on to that next location. I have so many great memories from every location that we met together as a church, and this place included, which is actually at the corner of 41 and Hanson here in Fort Myers. It's of all places the Arabic Shriners Temple, and we just have even great memories of things that happened here. I remember some series that my dad taught here over 20 years ago, and it's just really amazing. I remember he had a series about the wilderness, and we learned that any wilderness experience in our life is this: the wilderness is the place that God speaks, right? And then he did this forever long series out of the book of Nehemiah that we thought, is he ever going to finish the series? But there were so many things that were pertinent and that just challenged and changed people's lives as we met together at a crazy place, the Arabic Shriners Temple. I've got some pretty crazy memories here because we'd have to come early and set up. I remember having to come in with air freshener to clean up the smell of alcohol and mop the floors because there was stuff spilled all over the floor. But it never seemed to hinder the kind of services we had. And I guess some people that came always wondered if we were certain types of churches. We were just talking about one of those things. What happened in the conversation you had here?
A lady asked if we were a church that handles snakes.
I handle snakes. No, we never have been. I hate snakes, never will be. We're not a snake handling kind of church. Kind of funny all the things that people thought that we were. So many great memories. And then here's where really our influence away from us began to expand to a whole nother region, or a whole nother level really, because in 1989, we sent on our first short-term missions trip, and you and I happened to be on that trip.
Sure.
And we went to
Guatemala.
Really, I think our lives were kind of changed on that trip.
They were.
It's a pretty amazing time. And then the very next year, we sent another team to Guatemala, and one of the guys that was on that trip, God captured his heart for missions, and to this day, he's on the mission field in Guatemala, and that's Randall and Jackie Darby.
Yes.
So they were sent right out of this house because we've always had a heart to advance the kingdom, not just here in our region, but obviously ultimately around the world. So those are some of the powerful things that happened, but something else happened in August of '88 that was really important in my life because I really began to step into the call of God on my life. I actually came on staff as an intern at that time. Up until that point, I remember Ron Willis had been directing the choir, but I came on, I started directing the choir, helping the band, working with youth ministry. I was the general all around, whatever anybody else doesn't want to do, I got to do personally. You remember that?
I do remember that.
Yeah, that was kind of fun. But I'm thankful for that, and I'm thankful that people have always had a heart to allow this to be a place where gifts and callings of God could emerge and they could step into the call of God in their life, right?
Yes.
Well, we wouldn't be where we're at without that.
Correct.
Nor would the ministry of our church be where it's at.
Absolutely.
So it's just amazing. In 1989, while we were meeting at this location, we bought some property off of Plantation Road, which then wasn't even half of what it is today.
No.
I think there was one other church on the road at that point, no other churches. We were the second church on the road. Now there's 5 or 6 of us there. But, at that time we thought we're going to move into that facility in a couple years. And, it ended up being 9 years later before we moved in. So even though things were good at the beginning, not everything was good.
No.
But there were people that stuck with what God had, that invested in prayer, that invested finances and gave because they believed that God had called this church to do something and be something in this region. So really, we're living out a legacy that they sowed for right
Very
now,
much so.
right? And that's amazing. And then something else dear to our hearts happened here.
He proposed to me, and I can't imagine why he thought it would be okay to take a girl who hates the limelight and put her in front of everyone.
Kind of like I'm doing on this video.
Yes.
Yeah. So
As
we
it
were
is.
having a New Year's Eve service. I had the opportunity to do the announcements, and then I called you up randomly at the end of the announcements, got down on one knee in front of God and everybody. But you said yes.
I said yes.
And that changed our lives. So then we were in this facility for 11 months after that. And I can tell you what the last date was that we were in this facility.
Because it was the day after we got
Day after we got married. So our last Sunday here was November 25th, 1990. Here we are at Fort Myers High School, and this is where we began having services on the first Sunday of December, 1990. This by far was, well, the best auditorium we ever met in. However, it had its own unique challenges. We would get here at 8 o'clock every Sunday morning, pull everything off of the truck, our sound system, stuff for nursery, stuff for kids' classes, and have our Sunday morning service. But then in the afternoon, they would rent this out to other organizations, which wouldn't be a big deal if we didn't also have a Sunday night service like we did back in those days. So we would have to clear the stage after our Sunday morning service, leave, come back early for our Sunday night service, set everything back up, and at the end of the night, pack it all back up, take it back to the truck, and do it all again the next week. We would never have been able to do that without all the faithful people that would show up early and help and serve, that ultimately helped us advance the kingdom back in those days. Well, this auditorium also has another special place in my heart because it was right about at this location that I stood and actually delivered my very first message at our church. Now, I don't know what my dad was thinking back in the day because he took the whole leadership of the church to some conference in Chicago and left me here to minister. And I got to tell you, I had a solid 25 minutes of material that I delivered in about 10 minutes. I can't tell you how many times I thought I felt sorry for the people who were here on that day. However, this is just another stop in our journey as a church that has ultimately helped to lead us to where we are today. After 5.5 years of being a mobile church, setting up and tearing down every Sunday, in 1992, we finally moved to a location right here off of First Street where we could set everything up and use the building all week long. Yeah, believe it or not, right here behind us, there used to be an old church building that we rented right here off of First Street, and now these incredible apartment complexes are here. Of course, that building had its challenges as well. I remember showing up here one Easter Sunday morning, and poor Paul Scoggins was out in the parking lot clearing the drains from the parking lot because it had poured rain and nobody could park in the parking lot. And he was in his Sunday outfit, soaking wet, cleaning stuff up.
Yes.
You know, in that season, we never could have made it without all the people that were just volunteering, serving their time and energy. I remember Paul Scoggins and Dave Sermon and my dad being on top of the roof and fixing leaks. It seemed like it was weekly. That building was leaking because it was so old. But you know, it was funny. We were just happy to have a building. We were thankful we had a place that we could settle down and really kind of begin to be established a little bit more.
Yes, very much so.
We were meeting here from 92 until 98. And then, of course, in 96, Allison was born while we were worshiping here. And then Caleb, 2 years later, while we were building the building on Plantation, Caleb was born. And so, as you can see, there's so many places that we've met. And it took so many people that were serving and laboring, giving of themselves, investing prayer, time, energy, so that we could eventually, in 1998, finally move onto the property, Plantation Road, that we'd purchased back in 1989. So here we are, and in 1998, we actually moved into this facility. And when we moved in, right about here was the end of our building. And we only had 13,500 square feet. We only had 6 acres, and we had about half the parking lot of what we had today. But the people knew that God had more planned for us, and so immediately we doubled the parking lot space, and then we eventually acquired the other 12 acres that are around us. And then in 2002, we actually expanded the building where it went from 13,500 square feet to 23,500 square feet. And now, when we finish this renovation, we're going to have over 28,000 square feet of building where people can encounter God and experience life every week. And I'm just so thankful for everything that God's done throughout the history of Life Church. But what I'm really aware of today is the fact that, you know, if you see a turtle on a fence post, if you see a turtle on a fence post, it didn't get there by itself. Isn't that right? I mean, it had to have help getting there. And I kind of feel like we as a body, me as a leader, Jennifer and I as leaders together, I kind of feel like we're up on a fence post right now, and I realize we didn't get here by ourselves. That we're actually standing on the shoulders of people that fought their fight of faith, that contended, that prophesied, that believed the word of the Lord, that labored, that gave, so that all these people that are here today can encounter God and experience life. So all the people's lives that have been changed, the people that are today that had given their hearts to Jesus in this place, some of them are in full-time ministry today. Others are serving in the house today. For the people that have been set free and delivered from drugs and alcohol that are in this place today because of the ministry of Life Church, those people that we talked about, that some of them aren't even around anymore, they sacrificed so we could be here today. So we're standing on the shoulders of great people that fought fights of faith. And that's really what Moses is recalling to the children of Israel. I think he's saying, hey, look, don't despise the fact that they didn't go in when they had opportunity. Let's build on what they did and how they continued it and how we contended these 40 years through the wilderness to bring us to the place where we're at today. And we get all the way down to the end of Numbers chapter 33. And now the challenge comes. Speak to the children of Israel and say to them, God says to Moses, when you have crossed the Jordan into the land of Canaan, then you shall drive out all the inhabitants of the land from before you, destroy all their engraved stones, destroy all their molded images, and demolish all their high places. You shall dispossess the inhabitants of the land and dwell in it, for I have given you the land to possess. I've given you the land to possess. There are things that God has given us in promise form that have been contended for, that we have our opportunity today to contend for.